9 o'clock, and we're going to open the IAC meeting, and welcome to everyone that's have joined us. And we're going to begin right off the bat with our well, we do have a quorum, so I'll say that. But I also want to welcome a new member to the IAC. Linda Eberhardt is a well-known member to me. She sat on the state board when I became state superintendent. So I want to welcome her to this board. She has a wealth of experience. She has been a Baltimore City school teacher. She was a teacher of the year. She has extensive background with the state in terms of education programs, and I can't imagine a better person to be on the IAC than Linda Eberhardt. So welcome to Linda, and I just will tell everybody she is just a joy to work with. So great to have you here. So. And she just found out last night that she was appointed, and here she is today. So there you go for the commitment. So we really do appreciate that, and welcome you, Linda. So I think it would be a good idea if we just went around the table and introduced ourselves, and we'll start with Cassandra, and just tell Linda what you do and your role.
Yes, Madam Chair. I am Cassandra Viscara. I'm the Program Support Administrator for the IAC.
I'm Jay Schulte. I'm an Executive Associate to Bob Cole.
Oh, Denise Rivera, I'm the appointee of the governor.
Rob McCord, Secretary of Planning.
Good morning. Welcome. Ellington Churchill, Secretary of General Services.
Bob Corral, I'm the Executive Director of the IAC.
Ryan Gibbons, I'm appointed by the Speaker of the House.
Gloria Lawler, appointed by the Senate.
And I'm Elliot Schoen. I'm counsel to the IAC and with the Attorney General's office. And with me is Carla Boyd. She's another attorney in our office. And she's with me today because I originally had trial scheduled for this morning. Carla was on leave, and I forgot to tell her she didn't need to sit in for me.
Welcome.
But she represents board, so this is a good opportunity for her to see how this board works.
Thanks, Carla. Good to see you. And would the staff introduce yourselves, please, to the group?
Michael, you want to start?
Also known as SIL. I'm the Director of IT and
Brett Stevens, I'm the Assistant Director of IT for the IAC.
Excellent. And there will be no test for names. Did we miss anyone?
Only our guests.
Okay, well, we've been all around the room. You might as well introduce yourselves too. Dr. Couch. Wonderful. All right. Well, welcome to everybody. And on another note, I would like to tell you that I will be leaving the meeting at 10 o'clock today with a need to have a call with the governor's office. But my good friend here, Secretary Churchill, will be taking over as the chair. So we'll go ahead and get started. Do we have any revisions to the agenda? I believe we do.
Yes, Madam Chair, if we could move items 2 and 3 below item 9.
All right.
Same order.
Got it.
Below.
Anything else? Yes, Secretary?
Could I request that item E under 1, the consent agenda, just be moved out to be voted on separate, just to have an explanation on the record.
All right.
For that one.
Okay. All right. Anything else? All right. So let's move to any IAC correspondence included in our packets.
Madam Chair, no.
Okay. And then, do we have any public comment today? All right. So then let's move on to the consent agenda A through D. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Could we have a reflection on E?
Yes, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, there was some confusion in the school safety grant program. Center for Schools thought they had more money to allocate than was actually there. So they asked us if we could help out by taking some funds from the next year and allocating it over. That's this $2.4 million. They are the same type of projects that we have funded in the past. Frankly, we were trying to get all those projects onto their plate, but because of this issue, it's not a problem, and they will continue to manage those projects.
All right, any questions?
No, I just wanted to understand, I mean, $2.4 million is a big number, just it got moved from here to there.
Still
It's the
going to the
same
same
thing,
kind of
same
projects.
projects, right. Gotcha. Thank you, just
All right,
appreciate
great.
that.
So can we have a motion to approve E on the consent agenda? Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to Section 4 of your books, Facility Status Change Items. And the first Michael will talk about is Frederick County, and that's on page 66.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So we have two items in front of you today. The first one is a property transfer in Frederick County related to Lewiston Elementary School. The Frederick County Public Schools are requesting IAC approval to transfer .52 acres of land to Frederick County. Currently, there's a packaged sewage treatment plant at the southwest corner of Lewistown Elementary School property, a facility that serves the school and a neighboring property. Due to a need for additional sewage treatment capacity in the area, the Frederick County Division of Utilities and Solid Waste Management would like to build a higher capacity plant to serve the school and more of the surrounding community. So this is an opportunity to kind of rebuild that plant, and it'll continue to function to serve the area and the school.
Any questions for Michael? You want to read the motion, please?
Sure. The motion is to approve the transfer by the Frederick County Board of Education of .52 acres of land at the southwest corner of the Lewiston Elementary School property at 11119 Hessong Bridge Road in Thurmont, Maryland, 21788 to the Frederick County government, as approved by the Frederick County Board of Education on December 11th, 2019, to enable Frederick County to establish a new wastewater treatment plant to serve the school and the surrounding community.
All right, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Let's go to the second one in Northeast Middle School.
Okay, as I've been mentioning, there's a number of site approvals that are in process, and the one we have today is for the Northeast Middle School site in Cecil County, a site that the IAC staff are very familiar with. We've visited it recently. In this case, the Cecil County Board of Education requests site approval to enable it to acquire land for the construction of a replacement middle school in Northeast. The parcel to be acquired at 29 acres directly adjacent to the existing Northeast High School along Irishtown Road. The tract known as the Chesapeake Club Area P parcel is owned by the First Maryland Holding Company and another holding company there. In support of the construction of a new Northeast Middle School, the Cecil County government has an option agreement to purchase the property and intends to do so through the county's fiscal year 2021 capital improvement program. As of February, the option agreement is under review by the bank and the seller. After the agreement is signed, Cecil County intends to submit the project to the Cecil County Planning Commission for approval. The cost of the site here is $1.8 million. We have recently also visited the existing Northeast Middle School, which was constructed in 1932 and is a constrained site. So having looked at their alternatives, they decided to move forward with this one. So no major issues relative to it.
Questions? Would you read the motion, please?
Sure. The motion is to approve the acquisition by the Cecil County Board of Education of 29.012 acres of land known as the Chesapeake Club Middle School site directly adjacent to Northeast High School on property east of 300 Irishtown Road in Northeast Maryland 21901 to enable the construction of a school to replace the existing Northeast Middle School, adhering to the actions identified in the State Clearinghouse Review, State Identifier MD 2020-0107-0016.
Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we're in section 5, and we're going to have Fred come up and present that. This is the approval of non-public allocations, page 69 through 77 and 78 through 86.
Yes, I'm
Good morning,
Fred Mason.
Fred.
I'm not Gloria Mikolajczyk, who does much of the work on this program. So
Great.
she gets the credit. She's out sick today.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
I'm the voice. It's
All
a
right.
very
Thank you, Fred.
collaborative effort. Computer programmers from MSDE, the textbook program,
Okay.
IAC staff, and the school facilities branch all work together on this. The IAC in July approved a portion of the non-public aging schools program grants for 7 schools that got specific allocations above the maximum amount through General Assembly action. So those funds have already been allocated. The action today is to allocate the remainder of the funds as well as some recycled funds for FY 2020 projects. The range of allocations is from $6,260 to $25,040. And there's a list of projects. The levels are determined by how many criteria are met. The lowest level would be having tuition less than the statewide average per pupil, which is the threshold for eligibility for the textbook program as well as the other non-public schools programs. Then the second tier would be meeting one of the other two, at least 20% farms eligible or facility age over 50 years, and the top tier would be meeting all 3. And if there are questions, I'll answer them. If not, I'll read the motion.
Questions for Fred? It's interesting to see the range of requests. I was thinking we might see more safety-related
That's
items.
the next one.
Oh, okay.
You're absolutely right.
Chair,
So
I was-
item A,
Secretary Churchill,
I was just going to add, I think every jurisdiction is represented in this.
I think you're correct.
So
Yeah,
that's excellent.
that's good. All right, do we have we want to read the motion, please, Fred?
to approve FY 2020 Senator James E. Ed DeGrange non-public aging schools program project allocations as presented, totaling $3,077,793.
Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
A
Second.
motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, let's go to page 78.
Page 78 is the
And here are the
non-public
safety
schools
grants.
safety
All right.
grants. And these are allocated on a per pupil basis, $65 per student or $85 per student for schools that have more than 20% farms. And again, there's a list of projects that do, I believe, touch every jurisdiction in the state. Approximately 180 schools in each program, and schools can apply for both programs. They are separate funding streams. Are there any questions on the non-public schools safety grants?
Any questions for Fred on any of these grants? All right, do we have a motion to approve? Oh, you read the motion, I'm sorry, Fred.
To approve FY 2020 non-public schools safety improvement program project allocations as presented totaling $3,653,772.
All right, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
All right, and we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Fred. And now we're going to move to Section 6, which is the final adoption of COMAR and the revisions that we've made. And Cassandra will lead us in that, and that starts on page 87 of Section 6, I'm sorry.
Yes, Madam Chair. You likely remember that back in November, you approved the proposed changes to the COMAR. And as a reminder, this was based upon a statutory change in definitions. Without this change, we wouldn't be able to calculate the state local cost share anymore with the language that we had prior. So that proposed change was approved. It went through the public comment period. It was published in the Maryland Register. We received no public comment, and now the final adoption of that change is before you.
Okay. Any questions for Cassandra? Will you read the motion, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. The motion is to adopt the final COMAR revisions as published in the January 17th, 2020 Maryland Register, Volume 47, Issue 2, pages 125 to 126.
All right, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Cassandra. Now we'll move on to Section 7, and Jamie's going to come up, and we're going to talk about the cancellation of fiscal year 2020 CIP, VPU project at Franklin Square, pages 90 and 91.
And Madam Chair,
morning.
we have people from Baltimore City here if there are any questions.
Great.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. I am before you to deliver item 6, an action item, and it is the cancellation of one FY 2020 Baltimore City Public Schools CIP project. Before I read the motion, I will provide some background and then stand for follow-up questions if there are those. Item 6 can be found on page 87 of the meeting agenda. In the letter dated February 24th, 2020, Baltimore City Public Schools requested the cancellation of their FY 2020 CIP Franklin Square PK through 8 VPU project. The LEA has determined that replacing the entire HVA system, except for boilers, and all windows and doors throughout the school is much more cost-efficient and effective and a better use of state funds. The preferred multi-systemic project was submitted in the FY 2021 CIP and shown as approved in the FY 2021 CIP projections. I'll also add that reserve funds from the statewide contingency reserve for Baltimore City have been applied in the amount of greater than the allocation to the VPU project. The 72,000 square foot school was constructed in 1961, and it is very well utilized with 470 students. The IAC staff recommends approval to cancel this project. Any questions?
Questions? Secretary?
I don't-
Churchill?
I don't have a question on this. Actually, projects have been coming back from Baltimore City on a regular basis, and we understand the reason why. So I'm only saying this for our new board member. So I'm in support, of course. But how many? I think it's always good to keep track of how many projects are on future agendas that are coming to the board. Do you have any idea of future cancellations?
Oh, thank you. I cannot speak to that, but I would add that Dr. Lynette Washington is in attendance if you'd like to join us.
And Cindy.
And Cindy Smith, Director of Design and Construction for Baltimore City Public Schools.
Good morning. So we don't anticipate anything. There is one that's mentioned in the HVAC report that we'll get to that we're planning to cancel, but there isn't anything from the CIP that we're planning to cancel at this point.
Okay. And while you're sitting there, I do want to give credit and kudos to the city for everything that they've been doing so far on these projects, and I understand that they've been very successful.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, any other questions? All right, would you read the motion, Jamie?
Sure can. The motion is to approve the cancellation of one VPU project in Baltimore City Public Schools in accordance with the Education Article, Section 5, transfer the allocation of $1.173 million to the statewide reserved appropriation account for Baltimore City Public Schools.
Right, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Jamie, I think you're up again.
Yep, I sure am. Thank you
Give us a
again.
status report, and this is on page 92. And Cindy, you might as well stay right there.
Great. Thank you again, members of the commission. I'm before you to deliver item number 7. It is an informational item, status report on extra $15 million for Baltimore City HVAC projects. And then I'll stand along with Cindy for follow-up questions. The report is as of February 24th, 2020. And looking back on the last report, I would say it has been a quiet month as far as project phase progress, where 7 projects are operational, 0 under construction, 8 in construction procurement, 4 in design, and 0 in design procurement. As far as project status goes, 15 are operational or not behind, 3 are behind less than a month, and same as last month, 1 is behind by more than 1 month. Like I said, most of the action going on is behind the scenes in procurement for construction. And I will note that in the consent agenda, you all have just approved $2.823 million in contracts, which more than doubles the amount of projects under construction, soon to be under construction. So as of now, we have 19 projects that have been allocated for a total of $14.6 million. That's about 97% of the $15 million. Thus far, we have 11 design contracts approved, 6 construction contracts approved for a total of 17. Of course, this morning, 1 design contract was approved and 3 construction projects were approved. So right now, that means that we have a total of 12 design projects and 9 construction projects that have been approved for a total of $5.3 million, or just about 37% of the total amount allocated. And at this time, there is 0% expended, but it is early. So that is the status report for the month, if there are any questions.
Questions? The charts get better every month in terms of how many things we have to figure out on our own. I like the color-coded boxes. It's very helpful. Thank you. Appreciate it, Jamie.
Thank you very much.
All right. And now we're down to section 9, which is the State Fire Prevention Commission adoption of 2018. And Fred Mason is back to present that, which is not up for a vote, but just information, and that's pages 94 of your book under section 9.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you,
Salmon.
Fred.
This item is informational, but it could lead to action at a future meeting. The overall situation is that in October of 2019, the State Fire Prevention Commission adopted the 2018 National Fire Protection Association Life Safety and Fire Codes. And those codes were adopted with numerous amendments, which is within the purview of the State Fire Prevention Commission. A section that was adopted without amendment addresses fire extinguishment requirements in educational facilities, including relocatable classrooms. And the LEAs have brought concerns to IAC staff, which we share, that compliance with the provisions would have the ultimate result of requiring sprinklers in relocatable classroom buildings, which would significantly increase the cost of using what is a valuable tool for accommodating temporary capacity needs as well as needs for housing students during renovation or construction projects. We propose to work with the LEAs to quantify the potential cost impact of complying with this code and bring that back to the IAC and then discuss how to proceed. It is possible to, for any aggrieved party, which in this case could be the LEAs since they would bear the cost, but also the IAC sometimes contributes to projects that include relocatable classrooms. So we would quantify that impact and then report back and discuss how to proceed.
Yeah, I can't imagine how would you do a sprinkler system to relocatables? Bob, do you have any idea?
It would be difficult, and the concern is getting sprinkler lines to a provision of water, but also in rural areas where water supply may be a concern, or urban areas where older infrastructure may also cause water supply concerns.
Even in an urban area, the cost of utilizing relocatable classrooms can easily double, and that's when you have water supply with pressure, in order to run these lines and get them there. In a rural area where you don't have the pressure, where you might have to build storage tanks and jockey pumps to build the pressure in that, it would become astronomical. So we've included in this material just a quick article. You've heard me talking about it before, that nobody likes relocatables, but they're a valuable tool. It's better to house the students than leave them unhoused or put them in a crowded condition. The relocatables have a black eye because they don't look good for property values in surrounding areas, but they also are not temporary. We have, and we'll talk more about this later on, we have funding constraints throughout the state for permanent solutions. So they end up being way past their intent, which whenever we put a relocatable on, it should never go past 10 years. That should be the outside. It should be a 5-year horizon that we're looking at to utilize a temporary solution. But I want to add also that this particular change in the state law, which was just adopted wholesale, it sounds like, without really digging into it and the consequences, also affects other facilities, like an older school that we want to put an addition on. Currently, we're able to compartmentalize by putting a 2-hour separation wall, this could be a rural existing school. It could be an area where there's not water supply. So it's another way of building, and this law appears to have now prohibited us from doing that as well. So that sprinklers, which we prefer, if it's reasonable, but we don't prefer it if it's going to break the bank, which we're already broken having enough dollars. So there are two issues that we want to address with the LEAs.
Yes.
All right, any other questions? Secretary
Just for
McCoy.
information, are all of the portable systems portable classrooms we have, no plumbing? No plumbing at all?
No, some have plumbing when they have bathrooms. But it's a different size of water line that feeds that. And typically, it doesn't take a lot. And the drainage can be either locally managed or to the building. Oftentimes, when we build a new school, we plan in good practice anyway, we plan if we think there's a remote chance that the school's going to run out of space in 10 or 15 years, we plan and put electrical and water and sewage hookups so that they can easily be brought in and taken away. But it's, in most cases, portables don't have bathrooms unless they are for younger grades, and that's really frowned upon. If we can keep younger grades within the school, that's even better.
The other question is, how's the issue handled in other states with portable classrooms and compliance with of
That's
fire
a,
code?
that's a good question, because this is a national adoption of change in NFPA 1 and NFPA 101. And I have not heard of this problem elsewhere until we woke up and saw this and began to wonder, how is this going to affect us? So we will also check with the other states.
If somebody solved it with multiple points of egress or some other situation that they've enabled them to satisfy the fire folks about everybody can get out quick enough, that I don't know what the issue is in other states that have faced the same issue that we're in right now.
Some of the requirements here, I'm aware of a few other states, but some of the requirements I agree with, 30-foot separation between relocatables, that just makes sense for emergency vehicles and that. So maybe part of this is a good thing and maybe part of it's a bad thing, but we'll find out from other states what they're doing.
I mean, I don't want us to look like we're not worried about the safety of the children in the schools. There's nobody here that's not worried about that. The issue is, what's a reasonable way to comply, and are there alternatives that other states have adopted that still let this situation go on? So thank you.
Any other questions for Fred? Thank you, Fred.
Thank you.
All right, now we're going to go back to Section 2, which is the Kent County appeal of the fiscal year 2021 CIP recommendation for Galena Elementary School renovation. And I'd like to invite Dr. Karen Couch to come up.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Salmon, Mr. Gorel, and members of the IAC. Let me begin by extending my appreciation for all the support that you've provided to Kent County Public Schools to this point, especially upon completing our 6-year facilities plan. This is my 7th year as the superintendent for Kent County, and we've completed more projects in Kent County than the last 20-plus years. So I think a lot of it had to do with lack of capacity at the school system for completing the projects, and really lack of understanding on the process. I came from New Mexico. I worked with Bob in New Mexico, and as a superintendent in New Mexico, completed a lot of projects. So I'm familiar with the need to complete the projects, and I know how important they are to the community. So going to what we requested for the 2021 CIP, we requested $2.9 million to complete Galena. It's targeted renovations, completing and also replacing the systems, the roof and the HVAC. The IAC awarded $2,091,000, which is short $825,000 from the original request. We've done a lot to extend the life of our facilities, but this is really going to impact our ability to start the project on time. I did approach our county council to see if they were willing to front load the money, and they are also extended with available resources. Us being the smallest county in the state, they are also concerned about the monies front loading it as well. So what we're potentially facing is the delay of the project until we receive 100% of the money. And I would say that that's detrimental to this particular project for several reasons. And I figured pictures were worth 1,000 words. So I included some pictures of the undersized cafeteria for you so that you can see the need for us to move forward with this project. Some of you may not be aware that Kent County closed 2 elementary schools, and we consolidated all of our students into the 3 remaining elementary schools. So that put a lot of pressure onto the facilities that we have already in place. In particular, the cafeteria, which is greatly undersized for the number of students that we have at that school. And you'll see the congestion. The pictures are the congestion that we experience just because of the narrow, awkwardly located circulation space to get outside, and also just the fact of getting in and out of the cafeteria. This project really needs to move forward with that. The second reason that we think it's detrimental to this project to delay is that with consolidation, we also moved the language support, which was a district program. We moved that to Galena Elementary, and we do not have adequate space for that program. And this renovation of this particular space would be highly beneficial and meet the educational needs of these high-needs students. The last two things are the roof and mechanical system at Galena Elementary are the worst in the district. We've put this off because we decided that we would go for targeted renovations we were initially going to move forward with this project before we consolidated our schools. And then once we consolidated schools, we knew that we were going to have to renovate some additional spaces. So we delayed the project on purpose so that we could come forward and bring it as a package. But we would hate to delay because the summer would be an opportunity for us to replace the roof and the HVAC. And then finally, you're all aware that if we delay the project, cost escalation might be such that it would affect our ability to complete all the projects that are very important for this Galena project. So respectfully, I am requesting that you reconsider and provide us 100% of the funding that we requested in the FY21 CIP application.
So, Madam Chair, between now and May, we have opportunity to make projects whole if we can. We have a handout here. I thought it would be good information for all of us to consider. The way that we allocate funds, as you know, and we would like to, and I'll talk later about trying to evolve that to be something more predictable, it has resulted in the amounts that you can see that are allocated to each of the LEAs. On the column 2, which we have been using most recently, what have you done in the last 10 years so that we can kind of meet the expectation of the recent history and LEAs can plan what they can do in the coming years. As you know, knowing what the dollar amount is to be able to utilize is critical to planning a project. You can hardly go and spend money on planning and design documents and so forth that you've got to have to know even what a project's going to cost, and you can pull the trigger when you go forward if you don't know what the funding source is going to be and how much. So this is what we have been doing the last couple of years, and it was well received among the LEAs because they understand what possibly to expect. Whenever we compare that across the board, that would be the last column of what would occur if we divided it up just per student, which is the original overall intent. It's not in COMAR or anything else. It's just been a practice, and then we shave off of each other from year to year to try to make things work. This is how they would break out, and it's pretty interesting. Whenever you look at, for instance, Kent County, that they are significantly under. If they would have received money and they could have put this money in the bank, they would have a lot of money to be able to expend right now. In fact, this is a proposal that you at the Funding and Assessment Work Group asked us to try to come up with different alternatives of how we could move forward. This relates to that, so that those dollars could be used by one of the other LEAs, for instance, Anne Arundel and Baltimore City, who needed additional funding to be able to keep projects moving. So it's good information. I think that whenever we look at overall at this particular project, it is one that you have your design done. You bid next week, right?
Actually, we're supposed to bid tomorrow, but we delayed until the 18th, March 18th is when we open up the bids.
All right.
The reason why we delayed it is because we had an additional addendum to clarify some questions from our contractors.
So to keep the project moving, it would require these funds, and we just wanted to get this in front of you. Of course, superintendent does, so that you could give us how you think this is as far as important or not, because to do this means that we have to take what little money we have elsewhere, and we don't have a lot, to be able to try to make this work. potentially even having to shave from somebody else that might have some expectations. Arabia does a phenomenal job in communication with all of the LEAs to ask, do you really need the money this year? If we award the project, couldn't you complete it next year? So it's a practice that we do and do it quite well, particularly with regards, again, to Arabia. So we think this amount of money we could work through. But we needed to get your feedback. While I'm talking, let me just say one more thing. When I visited this school, these are Band-Aids, frankly, that it's an old facility, as you know, and there's nothing wrong with the facility being old, so long as it is put in the right place and it functions well, so that you don't have to walk from, it doesn't take you forever to get from one place to the other in the school. This school takes forever to go from one place or another in the school. You have to go up and down steps and under hallways. I don't know why it was built that way, except that it looks like it has always been a patch job.
They've added on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, the courtyard was filled in, and that became the library. So, it's just a matter of available funding for a small school system that is just trying to make sure we have appropriate educational facilities for our kids.
Well, I think the way that I look at it is that Kent County has done the right thing by consolidating schools. And that is a hard thing to do in a community, as you all know. And so because of that, it created an issue with some overcrowding in this school, and I've also been there. And it is, as Bob describes it, it is very difficult to navigate. And we're talking about little ones, too. So I'm in favor of trying to find the money to finish this project. Kent County, as you see in the last 10 years, has not gotten hardly any money at all from the IAC. And I would like to see if we can support this. So that's how I feel about it. What's everybody else think? Secretary?
My notes last night were the same thing about I would like to not think that we're penalizing anybody for consolidating school systems when that takes such an urging to do, and it's a painful thing to do.
Right.
So I had the same note, and I just don't want to see anybody penalized for consolidating the schools and trying to be efficient. There's a lot of square footage that we're no longer be asked to take care of because they've consolidated the school. And then I understand the county commissioners, they've got their position, they've got the rest of the county to take care of for everything else they have to do. And I don't want to necessarily put the school system in a position of having to bargain back and forth, can you forward fund half of this? Can you forward fund a third of this? In the smaller county, it's already difficult to provide all the services that have to be provided. So I too would be looking to see if there's anything we can do to get it going.
Denise?
I concur. Absolutely.
Ellington?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I concur. I think this is a needed project for this
Smallest.
the smallest school system in the state, so.
Gloria and Brian?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In fact, maybe she can get her 10-year difference.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was thinking. There
No,
you go.
no. Members,
Wrong thing.
Linda?
My question is, then where does these funds come from? So on this chart, is there a specific place that I can see, or is it some general pot of funds? I'm sorry, as being new, I'm not
No,
quite
it's a
sure.
good question.
Madam Chair, very, very good question, and thank you, Ms. Eckbert. If you look at column number 3, let's see, no, I've got the wrong column, I'm sorry. This is just the estimates. We take the total amount of money that is allocated each year. This is where we generally start. Look at how many students are in each of the LEAs in each of the counties, and then that creates a percentage of the total number of students in the state. And then we multiply that times the dollars that are allocated to us through the legislative process that the governor approves with his budget. Does that answer your question?
So then, there's additional money in that pot that would then be transferred to the Kent County.
Cassandra?
Madam Chair, if I could. So our projections start out with the governor's preliminary budget of 280 million. But between when you approve the December 75% allocation and when you approve the 100% allocation in May, we're also looking at all of our other funds. So we're assessing whether there are other pots of money that have any funding remaining, whether projects have come in under budget. We're looking at each LEA's reserve funding and whether any of that reserve funding is old enough that it might go to the statewide reserve. So there is an opportunity that we are going through now, an analysis exercise that we go through every year to identify every last bit of money that we can allocate. So there's potential that there may be some money we had not already identified from a prior year funding source. And then, of course, the other option that we could look at is working with the other LEAs, like Director Gorel mentioned, to see if their draw schedules really support the need for the funding that they're receiving this year, or if we might be able to shave just a little bit from them this year and allocate it to them next year instead.
Secretary McCord?
The way to look at it might be that that's the big pot, and column 4 has the estimated 280 million there. That number is not 280 that we know of. Is it a little more than 280 at this point? That's what you're saying you don't know how much more than 280 you're going to have. Okay, so column 4 has that estimated 280 at the top. We may have more than 280, but we've only allocated 90%. 90% of that 280 has been allocated. So there's still 10% left in the big pot yet to be allocated. I think that's probably the easiest way to describe that. And so that's where we would be dealing in, that potentially more than 280, but we've only allocated 90% of it. So this is kind of a last piece of the pot that has to be spread over the rest of the state. Okay?
Thank you for
No
taking
problem.
time to
Not a
explain
problem.
it.
Absolutely. So it sounds like we have support to move ahead with this. So let's find the money to complete this project.
Madam, we will do our best, and then we'll bring back a recommendation before the May meeting.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Couch.
Thank you.
Hopefully you have a smoother trip home than here. All right, so now we're going to move to Baltimore City, and this is under, Bob's report under the Section 3, and the handout is coming out. You received this memo from Bob describing a meeting that he had and what the request was, and I'm going to ask him to report on that.
And Madam Chair, again, Cindy and Lynette are here if they would like to be available for questions or comments. But this is not unlike the problem we just heard at Kent County, where there are more problems and issues than there are funds to take care of. I was asked for more information by a Senator McCray, who is up in that area, of why these projects, two projects, one is Furley Elementary School and the other is the population for Vanguard Middle School, continue to be housed in the Thurgood Marshall Old High School. They've been there since 2018. Why can't we do something about moving this forward? And there's a long list of reasons why that I'd be happy to review with you. But the bottom line is that this year for Furley, we were not able to move that project forward, which was going to be about $11.2 million, because it didn't appear to be a complete solution. Very briefly, it's a school built in 1968. It has had structural problems repeatedly when you look at the history of the dollars that have been expended towards the school. There were even repairs made in 2005 that didn't hold up. The current request would only partially fix the problem. The cost of replacement is about $30 million. which in the long run would be a lot better solution, and the LEA doesn't disagree with that. It's, again, the same as Kent. You have to try to make it work with the dollars that you have available that just simply aren't enough. The other school is the Northeast Middle School that also has some large needs, and the LEA would like to make that facility work as well for $15 million. It is one that is going to be difficult for us to support unless the population, the Vanguard population, is about twice what it currently is. To go forward with the Northeast Middle School would mean that we would be at about 50% occupancy, 55%, somewhere in that neighborhood. The LEA feel like that they might have population that they can draw from other places, and we'll have to go through that process as we go forward. At this point, there isn't funding to go forward with either project. I want to stop and pause. If you don't mind, I also have in this handout, and this is something that we provided to the assessment and funding work group, to look at the big picture, the overall concept of what we're trying to deal with. I think because without understanding the forest, and we're only looking at the trees, it's going to be hard to find a solution from this. And I want to what you're looking in front of you, if you look at these first columns, 1972, 1973, and that, what we've done is taking the allocations, the statewide allocations for each year, and adjusted them with Whitting-Turner's historic information to adjust the numbers. So in today's dollars, that today's dollars in 1972, the allocations that went out to the state, the CIP program, was $1.2 billion that year. The following year was even more, over $2.2 billion. We created a lot of real estate throughout the state. In fact, the Northeast Elementary School may have been one of those schools that was built with these dollars in the early 70s. As opposed to the Furley that was built in '68, was probably built with Baltimore City dollars. Dollars that Baltimore City doesn't put into their facilities today. Baltimore City puts in about $19 million, and that's it, which leaves a heavy burden on the LEA to be able to have dollars to move things forward. But why it's important to look at all of this is because if we increase the real estate throughout the entire state, and everybody knows that we're increasing the dollars to go out to the LEAs. Most of the dollars, including Baltimore City's use of most of the dollars that we have available, are going for maintenance capital projects, for replacing roofs, HVAC systems, doing little remodels. You know, you've heard this. So whenever you have a project like this one, that is a very high need project, and honestly, we don't have the assessment. But if we did have the assessment, from what I've seen, this could be one of the highest ranked projects in the state, because it would not make sense to Band-Aid this type of project. If we had a standards-based process that's being considered, this would be a project that would stand on its own and not have to compete with health and safety and roofs and everything else that we're having to compete with. But we don't have that at this point. And so the request that was made to me is, how can we make this work? Not this year, but FY22. How can this work? This is important for certainly the senator, but also other leadership that were in the meeting. I included their names in the memo that said we need to resolve this problem. How do you do that? We've already heard how difficult it's going to be to take just less than $1 million and make Kent County's project work. Whenever we look at $30 million across all of the LEAs, they have needs as well. This is going to be a very difficult problem to solve with CIP. In fact, don't think it's possible, and I shared that in the meeting, that this would be difficult. There are some ideas that have been considered, and amongst staff, I talked to some of them with Lynette and Cindy a couple of days ago as we were looking at potential solutions. One of them that was put forth by the Chair of Appropriations, Delegate McIntosh, was that for the Northeast School, and again, I want to say that we have obstacles that we can maybe overcome. That evidence we don't have. I saw that Nicole had handed some stuff out, and we can talk about it now if necessary, or we can talk about it later, because this meeting is mostly about where can we do for funding. But the idea for that school, for $15 million, let's say population is there, that it can be considered for an FY22 type project. $10 million, she thought, could be generated by excusing the tax or waiving the sales tax on school projects. And I think she intended for school projects throughout the state, so that would help everybody. Exactly how that would work with the dollars and as they were needed for this project, we would have to see, because eventually those dollars are going to have to come out of other uses at the LEA as well. And then $5 million from the Healthy Schools Fund. And as we have reviewed the language in the Healthy Schools Funds, it actually would not preclude using the dollars for a project. But in talking with the LEA, they got $9 million last year. They can receive up to $15 million a year. They would like all the money they can get for the original intent of those dollars, which are health, safety type projects. So they would have to give up, they would have to prioritize some of their needs to this project, to the Northeast School. On the Furley School, for $30 million, it could possibly be the same. I mean, conceptually, it could be $15 million a year for 2 years to be able to pay for that project. And that's where we sit today. There's a lot of other details in here. I have some overall recommendations I'd like to review before we complete today. I think we've got a lot of steps moving in the right direction, but in short, this is the type of project and why we need another system for funding. We've got our CIP, which is being consumed just to keep the doors open at our schools. There are few schools, few counties that get enough from the CIP to be able to do their important high-need projects. If we had a standards-based system and this was highly ranked and it had a separate funding source, which is already a preliminary recommendation out of the assessment funding work group, then this one would have a target with dollars available that the LEA could see years in advance. Of course, this one, if it's top on the list the first year, you wouldn't have years in advance, but to be able to see a progression and know where the dollars might come going forward, which is hugely important, to know what funding is available for what projects. Even if we move forward, for example, on this project and for FY22 for Furley, it needs to be designed. And the county, Baltimore City, is already constrained with that $19 million is all they get from the city to be able to have dollars to expend on planning to do a design development for this project. And so they're caught in the middle here too, that if they are able to come up with the dollars, can we start the design? When is the funding going to come so that we can start this project? Again, the goal that was expressed to me is that these two projects somehow move forward in FY22. And I felt that this is important to share with the membership for discussion. At this point, I will be basing my recommendations on using the Healthy School Funds in order to make this whole. And I have to deliver those. They were requested by the President of the Senate. If I could notify them by tomorrow, and that's what I'll do. I'll tell him my best opinion. And then the legislature, of course, have options to be able to solve the issue in another way if they feel it's more appropriate. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Bob. Just I'll start with a question or two and open it up for questions based on the content that's been provided. I just want to make sure that we're all clear in terms of really what the request is, because 3 projects have been mentioned, but we've talked about 2 specifically. Furley is very clear, and that project has a capital project value of $30 million.
That's correct.
In your memo, you reference Vanguard, but you've also discussed Northeast Middle, which is affected
Yes.
by these decisions. So-
Let me give you a little more information on that. The old Thurgood High School is accommodating all of these students for both Vanguard, the middle school, and we visited the school. Thank you, Cindy. She took us all around so that we could really understand this and try to digest it firsthand. The Vanguard Middle School principal actually likes it at that location. But the site is one that is desired to be surplused, and there are desire by some to turn it into a recreation center after it's surplus. But that's where the Vanguard students are. They would like to move the Vanguard students, plus it sounds like maybe some students from other middle schools, to fully occupy the old Northeast School, which is currently empty. Both the Furley and the Northeast Middle School are both empty. The Northeast Middle School has been empty for a while. It was has been used by the Baltimore City Police Department for training. They really tore it up. They're cosmetic things for the most part that can be repaired, but there's a cost. But when you look at the deferred maintenance on that facility, it's not from just the last couple of years. It's a long time, and again, it's this, we built a lot of real estate through the 70s, and everybody's dollars to take care of it has decreased. The Furley children and their principal really wants to be back in Furley, and that makes sense. My opinion is that Furley is a neighborhood school. It's easy to get to, and currently the children having to go to Thurgood Marshall is a remote from their neighborhood, and it's just not desired by the parents or the principal, and the city can give you more specifics on that. But she was very clear. We need out of this school. So that's the overall view of things.
And because we
I just want to add just a little bit of additional, in addition to what Bob is saying. So I'm Lynette Washington, I'm the Chief Operating Officer, joined by Dr. Stewart, who is our Facility Planner, and Cindy Smith, who's Director of Design and Construction. And so one of the things that I also want to highlight is that for the Northeast Middle School, that there is a middle school seat demand. And so the document that was passed out to the commission is about the middle school seat demand. So if we are to move the Vanguard students back into the Northeast building, it does provide us the opportunity to address that seat demand. Because right now we have middle school students that live in that cluster that are traveling across the city in order to go to other schools. And we know that there's a lot of research that talks about absentee, about students having longer transportation commutes to school. And then the other one is about the Furley Elementary School, even though while they were in the Thurgood Marshall building, which is a building that we are hoping to surplus back to the city, particularly talking about our building utilization and all the square footage that we're holding on to, the Furley School has grown in its space too. So we have a large immigrant population that's moving into that particular area too. So with these 2 schools, we'd be accommodating the Furley School growth in their population, and then the Northeast Middle would be addressing some of the middle grade seat challenges that we have in that area.
And we don't have the full CIP in front of us for Baltimore City. What priorities were Furley and Northeast Middle identified on?
Ravi or Cindy, probably either one can dig that out.
So we had several projects in the CIP, in FY21 CIP. The first one for the roof and structure for Furley was priority number 5. The HVAC for Furley was priority number 6. And then we had a renovation for Northeast, which was priority number 12, and then the roof for Northeast, which was 13. And then we had a few other projects for Northeast that were further on down the list, 32, 33, and 35.
All right, so they weren't bundled, they were all envisioned as separate projects to address the
Yes,
need.
they were all, it was not a replacement for Furley that was submitted in the CIP, it was the systems.
And one other thing that I do want to highlight is that with the Northeast building, one of the reasons why we allowed the police department to move in the Northeast is because we get vandalism for our buildings. And so it was to have an occupant to ensure that our building wasn't being vandalized. And I will say that once the police office department did move out, and we have a commitment from the commissioner that he will repair any of the damage that they have done to that building. So we do have that commitment. But when they moved out, we experienced vandalism, and we've spent, I would say, probably $40,000 into just trying to secure that facility. But again, we experienced vandalism once they moved out of the space.
Was that commitment provided as a part of content to us as?
No, no, that I'm aware of, I don't think we had that commitment, and we're looking at. And two, I want to add that, and I did mention the deferred maintenance on the school. 15 million would get the school open, but is going to have very high needs over the next decade. So it's not just 15 million. I don't know what that number is. But when we looked at it in combination with the population that we were aware of, it just did not look like the project was viable to be one that the IC could participate in, considering against all the other needs, because all the allocations made to Baltimore City that we did make used the funds, and it was needed.
Are there any other questions?
I have a question, so I can fully understand. Are we being asked to reprioritize the list? Are they going to do that in terms of stacking which schools come first, second, third? I think you said fifth. Did you say that Furley? I understand that correctly?
They reference 5 projects that.
5 projects in there.
Were on their CIP prioritization list.
Right, so we aren't asking to reprioritize anything for FY '21. And those projects were not approved, actually, in the FY '21 CIP. What we're doing is kind of preemptively talking about what we're going to need for FY '22 and then a couple years, following that for these two schools.
So even if they prioritize, and this is important, let's say they make these projects number 1 and 2.
Right.
The funding that they receive will not be sufficient to do both of those projects at the current funding levels. That's plus all of the other needs that they have, and just like all the other LEAs, they have maintenance capital needs, roofs, maybe more roofs than most of the LEAs as far as needing replacement. So it's a big backlog, and the issue here is about total dollars that are available to be able to do high-need projects like this.
So first, you're going to have to reprioritize, put these 2 at the top, am I correct?
They could do that.
And then you're going to look for the money. I mean, that's the way it always, we don't have
That's
the money
right.
up front. We go and look for the money once we reprioritize and put them in a different order. I'm trying to get it straight in my mind.
No, that's right.
And then we'll find the money. I'm not worried about that. We always do.
Mr. Chair, we have always tried,
Yes,
but
we've done a good job. You've done a good job.
there are more and more of the large projects that are left behind annually. That backlog is building as well. So this is where we are. This is reality, but the state has been very proactive with 1783 to look at how that we can do things differently. And I don't think when it comes to capital that anything has to be set in stone. For instance, I think that there's high schools that there is already money carved out in the current legislation. The way I look at these projects, at least the Furley is a much higher priority than any of the high school projects. And this is from a facility standpoint where we have grade school kids that are having to travel somewhere remotely because they don't have a school to go to. So if I was in charge, I would say, where can we carve off some of this money from the from the high school projects that have been identified that are already in HB1 as they are currently drafted.
Mr. Chairman, and I'll
Yes.
shut up. I read the memorandum. I ran it off at home and read it. I'm very taken with the background for this, and that's why I am open to discussion.
Yes.
Of how do we do this? This is what they are requesting. How do we do it? But when you read it, it's quite compelling. Quite compelling. I haven't been feeling this way about some of the projects, as you well know, but this one in particular does grab your attention when you read the background of it. And I can understand why they would want to come in and reprioritize and ask for additional money. And I guess it's up to us to try to come up with that in some way, shape, or form.
So that's correct. And the IAC has been working with the Baltimore City School System we've had several conversations about how we would envision changes to be made to be beneficial to the school system in terms of their program. So there's no action required of us today.
Okay.
This is a piece of information for us to consider in terms of when these projects will come back to us for future action. So again, this is the 22 CIP. We will continue to follow the same process. Mr. Guerrero has got to respond back to those elected officials that have made some requests, and he's looking for just an indication on where we're going to go. But this will not be solved solely with one organization. It has to be a comprehensive plan to address the need of any one LEA. So.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chair, I'm not going to excuse myself, not for your sake, it's for my sake too. If it's $280 million and all but 10% is allocated, we're talking about $28 million yet to be allocated.
That is accurate.
Roughly.
Mr. Chair, members, but one important caveat to that is that we have projected out to 100%. So although we've only approved up to 90, LEAs have expectations for the full 100%.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair and Secretary, on that point, we moved up the guessing game and eliminated it, which was the cause of the begathon, so that all the LEAs knew at the first time that you were adopting recommendations, they could go talk to their counties and say, we can move forward with these, and this has shaved off a lot of time, at least 6 months, off the start of a lot of projects. So that was the purpose. So if last year, we didn't get the $10 million, and that put the hurt on some counties because the full funding wasn't there. We made up for that shortfall from this year's right off the top so that we made those projects whole so they could move forward, which made this year's allocation even tougher. Next year's hopefully is going to be easier with more funding.
Are there any other questions concerning this item?
Maybe the LEA has comments.
We're here solely to talk about the justification for the projects.
Thank you. I want to compliment you guys again. This is, you have a very tough job. So does Kent County has a very tough job. They're both about limited resources. Different problems, same basis, and the resources are people. You're lacking the number of people that you need for such a large problem to be able to move things, and you're lacking funding, particularly in my opinion on the planning side, to be able to get things lined up so that they can go. Then you also need to know where that money is going to be so that you can go whenever you got them planned. But you're not alone, but I'm very happy about the progress that you've made since my short tenure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Washington and panel, thank you for joining us today. Okay, Bob, I think that concludes our agenda for today. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair.
If I could have one point of privilege to say thank you to the Maryland State Board of Education for everything that they have done. This is for the benefit of Dr. Salmon, who's not here at the moment, but I just would like to extend my appreciation as Secretary of Planning responsible for census that the state superintendent has, everywhere she's gone, promoted the U.S. Census and the statistics in schools curriculum that can be used to educate students about the value of the census. And then students eventually educate their parents about the value of the census. So she has been promoting that everywhere she goes. We've been hearing good stories about that. And the census starts today as far as filling it out. Census Day is always April 1st, not since 1790, but it's been April 1st for quite some time. Now you have 3 virus-free ways to fill out your census. You can do it online, you can do it by phone, and you can do it by mailing in the form. But it starts today. The federal government has opened the window. We will be getting postcards in the mail to tell us our code and go in, but you can go in before you have the code on your postcard, and you can fill out your census. It should take you about 10 minutes. And that's $675 billion worth of census-derived funding from the federal government for education, for transportation, for transit, for all those kind of things. The latest research indicates it's $1.5 trillion worth of funding available from federal-derived census. Using the 675 number, every mail-under not counted costs the state $18,250 over the course of 10 years. So it's vitally important to fill out the blessed form. I used a expletive one time for that, so I now say fill out the blessed form. Every time somebody sees, if you don't want somebody coming to your house, the census workers won't come out until the middle of May for doing enumeration. Every form returned by phone, by email, by online or in paper, that generates do not have to go to the house. So if you don't want somebody coming to your house, fill out the blessed form. I'm just saying thanks as the State Department of Education for being a partner in getting the message out. So thank you very much. Sorry about that, Chair.
No. Thank you, Secretary McCord. It is vitally important for our state that everyone do their duty and fill out their census information. Are there any other comments? Otherwise, we'll entertain a motion to close this meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. We'll see you at the next time we meet.
Really good to see you.